AfterBuzz TV, the destination for TV superfans, producing aftershows for over 300 of your favorite TV shows, interviewing celebrities and showrunners, and bringing you behind-the-scenes exclusives. All thanks to E! Entertainment's Maria Menounos, producer Kevin Undergaro, and internet leader Akamai. Now, let the buzz begin!
It's the Fargo After Show.
Hello, everyone on the internet, and welcome back to the Fargo Season 2 After Show. Real quick, follow AfterBuzz TV all over social media at AfterBuzz TV. I am Lex Michael, and I am here with
Dave Child. You can follow me at Mr. Dave Child on Twitter and basically everywhere else, and DaveChild.com. Yeah.
So, Dave, this show...
Oh, boy.
...is really good.
Oh, yes.
This show is so stupendously good.
It's great.
Are
people watching the show? Because people should watch the show.
It is. I tweeted out today because I've been watching more or less since the season started, but I am consistently floored at how tremendous it is.
Oh, it keeps getting better, too. It's so good.
And in these past two episodes, every expectation that I had for where it was going in the immediate future, every one of them was wonderfully subverted.
Right.
And we're going to get into all of that. We are finally, tonight, caught up. So going forward, we're only going to be covering one episode until the end of the season as they air. And we're already now, we're in the back half.
Yeah, we're past the halfway point.
So tonight, it's episodes 5 and 6, and that's Gift of the Magi and Rhinoceros.
Mm-hmm.
Really quickly, since we've talked about what the significance of the episode titles are, as best we were able to discover such significance, what were you able to find, if anything, about the possible cultural significance of these two titles?
Well, okay, I'm glad you asked. Gift of the Magi is like a O. Henry story. It's a famous one. It's
not to be confused with O. Hansi.
Yeah, O. Hansi. Mm-hmm.
O. Hansi.
Shout out, O. Hansi. But it's kind of turned into cliche now. If like different shows have used it, it's a story about two married couples, about a married couple that give each other a gift on Christmas. They're both very poor, and one of them, and the only prized possessions they have is like the wife has long hair, and the father and the husband has a pocket watch. So the husband gives the wife like combs, beautiful combs, and has to sell the pocket watch in order to do that. And the wife gives the husband like a clasp for the pocket watch, but has to sell her hair in order to get it. So they both realize their gifts are meaningless, but they're important because it shows the affection that's there.
Right.
So that's basically what happens with the Blomquist in this episode.
We do. We see elements of that when we see Peggy decide pretty spontaneously and impulsively to sell the car to get some money for Ed to buy the butcher shop. But it is for naught because, spoilers for a show that presumably all you guys have already seen, there is no more butcher shop.
No, there's no more butcher shop, and that's the big thing. And also, it's important to note that Ed comes back to the house and says, hey, we should hit the road. We should leave the town. Because that's his little gift of the Magi. That's his little like moment of giving Peggy the chance to actually leave the town, which he's like so firmly put roots in.
Sure.
So that's where I think the gift of the Magi comes in with this episode.
Yes.
Now, Rhinoceros is Ionesco.
It's I believe the only point of reference I could find for it was the Eugene Ionesco play.
Yeah, Ionesco play, which is a famous absurdist play. Now, I think the fact that it's absurdist is almost more important than what actually happens in the play.
Because it's a play it's a small French town where the residents gradually turn into rhinoceros.
Yeah.
Rhinoceri?
I want to say rhinoceri.
Rhinoceroses?
I think it's rhinoceri.
Let's say
rhinoceri.
I like rhinoceri.
Let's say rhinoceri. So they become rhinoceri slowly, except for one guy who's first, by the way, chastised for being kind of a drunk, like kind of someone who's behind everyone, kind of dumb, and then he becomes the only one who's sensible while everyone else conforms to becoming a rhinoceri. And it's supposed to be based off of like the spread of communism and also the spread of Nazism and all that stuff, kind of people kind of becoming part of a group
sure.
without actually realizing that they're becoming part of a group or realizing what monsters they're becoming. So I was trying to figure out, like, that is there a little bit in the show.
Well, when I first looked up this play, or to refresh my memory about what the thematic tie might be, there is, if at the end of the play, this one guy who does not turn into a rhinoceros, at the end of the play tries to turn into a rhinoceros and can't, even when he wants to. So I started thinking, well, who is that analog on the show? Who aligns most closely with that? And at first I'm thinking maybe Lou, who is a constant, the same guy regardless of the upheaval going on around it. But then I went, I don't think it's Lou.
Could be Carl.
I think it's Carl Weathers.
I think it could be Carl, because this was kind of Carl's big episode, which I'm really happy that they used Nick Offerman so well, because I was a little worried he was becoming just a background player, a guy that would come in and say like something colorful and then leave.
And he's great in that capacity, and it was always fun to see him drift in and out of the story. But you get this far into the season, and you start to ask yourself, well, what's he there for?
Right, and he is the only one in the episode that fights against this feeling of violence that comes out. So everyone's becoming kind of a monster in a way. Everyone's becoming kind of a rhinoceros, as the Gerhardts.
Yes.
The Gerhardts are trying to, like, having their own assault on Precinct 13.
Which I want to get to, absolutely, yeah.
And you know, and the cops are kind of gearing up, I think, to fight back. And he's the one that was actually able to diminish the whole thing by actually being level-headed and talking things out, which is surprising to his character, which is, you know, he was like kind of the town drunk and blowhard, and he's actually able to have this really gripping moment, really wonderful moment. So I think he might be the one tie-in.
That would be my assumption.
And also Ed. I think Ed is also a big thing too, because he's seeing everyone around him. He's just trying to maintain, like, his humanity while everything around him is going crazy.
Sure.
And I think it's the absurdity is what it's really nodding to, because there's a lot of nods to the philosophy of absurdism. Like when Noreen, for instance, says, "What's the point of anything? We're all going to die anyways."
Right.
That sounds depressing, but it's actually where all absurdism comes from. Absurdism, you think it comes from just people like being like, oh, I think we should be silly. I think we should have fun. We should enjoy life. It actually comes from the opposite, actually the philosophy at least, and where a lot of the literature of absurdism comes from. It's from people saying, hey, it doesn't matter. We're all going to die. Let's just be fucking weird.
Sure.
Let's just get weirded out.
Sure.
So,
and, oh, there's another, just talking real quickly to wrap up the discussion of titles of the episodes. There's a scene in I believe it's in the interrogation room once Ed is at the police station between Lou and Ed, where Ed directly references the myth of Sisyphus.
Yes.
Of rolling the boulder up the hill in this fruitless effort to try and make progress where there is no progress to be made.
Yeah, but there is a important character point that Ed makes where he doesn't say, so what's the point of it all? Why am I doing this? What he says is like, so what I'm trying to say is no matter what, I'm going to keep doing what I have to do.
Yep.
Which is like, that's the philosophy of the myth of syphilis. That's the process of the myth of syphilis. And, you know, and it shows where his character is rather than just giving up on that rock and letting it fall back. So.
Absolutely. So let's circle back around, because there's a lot that happened in these two episodes. Yeah. So, I mean, first of all, at
Reagan,
the beginning of episode 5, the very first thing we get is Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, Bruce Campbell, Ash. We get Ash as Ronald Reagan, which I have to say, I was surprised at how good he was.
Oh, yeah.
Because I thought he was going to be, when I heard he was going to be Reagan, or when I like kind of figured out he was going to be Reagan, I thought it was going to be campy. I thought it was going to be
a caricature.
Yeah, a caricature, and he was just like spot on.
Yeah.
He was somewhere in between being very Bruce Campbell-y and also being a little bit Reagan-y, and he just kind of... They did that side of Reagan of the movie star.
Yes.
And Bruce Campbell's perfect for that because he looks like a movie star. He has that looks, but he's also able to be goofy.
Yes.
So,
and he's the first moment you see him, he's being very presidential, and he's talking, he's addressing the crowd, and he's spinning this wonderful, wonderful rhetoric about all these things. We're gonna the pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and make progress and deal with the problems that exist and move forward to a better, brighter tomorrow. And there's an amazing, amazing moment in the bathroom right after this between Lou and Reagan, where Lou asks him point blank, well, how are we gonna do this? And
just looks at him and nods and walks
away.
That's perfect. And you also have Lou being like telling him a real-time war story.
Yeah.
And a real-time, and him responding with, well, that reminds me of when I was in a war movie.
Right.
And I think the point of Reagan in this was kind of, we talked about this in the last episode, I think, or one of the previous episodes, where Reagan is the whole idea for Waiting for Dutch, which is the first episode.
Yes.
What the first episode was called, is that Reagan is symbolizing a hero that everyone wants to come to clean everything up, but he doesn't really exist. He doesn't really, there is no hero that will come and be able to, which actually, like, Reagan even says in his little On the Hill speech. He even says, like, we're not waiting for, like, someone to come in on a white horse, but everyone is waiting for Reagan to come in, be able to say something to Lou, to make everything right, to be able to just, like, prove that he's the hero. And it shows, the bathroom scene is perfect because it shows that he just can't do it.
Right.
He's not the perfect hero.
He's just a guy, and more than a leader, more than a hero, he's every bit, still for better and for worse, the matinee idol Reagan.
Right.
That he was, and that's what he is. That's what he knows to be. So when confronted with this very direct, but really, what are we gonna do?
Right.
He's got nothing.
Also, by the way, that state was one of the only states that did not vote for Reagan. And he also didn't win that state again in his re-election. So I thought that was kind of perfect.
Meanwhile, a lot of things are happening on the Gearhart side of the equation.
Yeah.
Before we get into this battle in the snow that I was not predicting we would see so soon,
oh man!
I just want to pause to point out, maybe redundantly, Dodd's a jerk.
Yeah, Dodd's a big dummy head. He's a big jerk.
So he spins this lie to Floyd that he essentially manipulates Hansi into corroborating about what actually happened to Rye. They now know, Hansi having found the belt buckle, they know that it was the Blomquists, one or the other. They assume it was Ed because Ed's the man and that's how they think.
Yeah, and
that's where the trail ends. And so Dodd's story is that he's not a butcher that's responsible. He is a hitman from Kansas City called The Butcher.
The Butcher, yeah. Which he's so hungry for war. He's just, because he knows that's where he has the power. Right. That's where he's able to be, because he's just this strong man and he's just this masculine dick.
Yes.
He's just able to
masculine.
He's a masculine dick. He's just, that's all he can do is just really just attack. And he's can only serve in the time of war, so he wants it to be a war as much as possible. It's his, like, grab for the throne.
Right. And of course now it's a knife in Floyd's heart hearing that this was done to my boy. And this of course has the direct effect of escalating the war with Kansas City. And that again, I was surprised. Fairly early in the episode, we get this big shootout between Kansas City and Gearhart forces.
Yeah,
in which
we lose Lou. We lose of the Kansas City group. Isn't that the guy's name? Not Lou.
Joe Bulo.
Joe. Yeah. We lose Joe.
Who's their figurehead for all intents and purposes, or at least as far as presumably there's a higher level that he reports up to. But as far as we've seen so far, he's been the top guy from Kansas City.
It's been him and Mike Milligan.
Right.
So, and we also lose one of the Kitchen brothers.
Yeah.
Which I was super surprised about.
And Hansi just takes him out from behind by cutting his throat.
Oh, so good.
So kind of cold, dude.
So cold. And that moment when Joe?
Yes.
Joe walks up to the car and just sees Hansi there.
Yeah.
And just, he's dead.
Oh, yeah.
You know he's dead. You don't need to see his head in a box. You know that
but
he's
you
dead.
do.
Oh, you do.
You do.
Oh, but of course we get to. And that's a nice moment. Maybe I'm skipping ahead.
We'll come back because there's a lot with Mike Milligan as well to talk about, because we learn a little bit more about him in these episodes as well, and his backstory. I did find it interesting that Hansi knocked the other kitchen brother out but didn't kill him.
Yeah, but that was so he could carry the head back. That's my guess is. He needed one person to survive that whole thing. And so he decided to go with the kitchen brother, which is, I wouldn't have done that. I would have made it like...
Well, because the other twin is now going to be real angry and real particularly bitter.
Yeah, that's a cold move. I would have just chosen like one of the other guys. You got to kill Joe, but you could have like chosen anyone there. Just any of the patsies. But we didn't know the patsies, so we knew a kitchen brother, so that's why it was kind of perfect.
So it's gonna look so the frame will look very lopsided, I think, for the rest of the season when you have Mike Milligan and only one kitchen. Actually, not to jump too far ahead, but we do see a retaliatory effort on the part of Kansas City in episode 6, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
We will get there.
I do have a question, and I should have researched this. Is the Kitchen Brothers, are they played by the same guy? Or are they actual twins?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
I thought they were twins, but then after one of them got killed, I was like, they might be played by the same guy.
And this might be just to cut down a little bit on effects budget and the amount of work that actor has to do.
Yeah, they're possibly. Like, okay, we have a twin situation, but it'll get resolved.
We will look that up. Internet, if anyone on the internet happens to be listening and you want to Google that up for us,
just look on IMDb.
How many Kitchen Brother actors are there?
Right.
So while all this is going on, I believe it is at Dodd's behest that his name is Charlie, Bear's son, is dispatched alongside a fellow named Virgil to go and deal with Ed. And again, at the sake of being, at risk of being overly redundant, Dodd is
a dick.
He's a dick.
He's Dodd a dick.
He's not only is Charlie a kid, a 17-year-old boy, he's physically handicapped,
right.
But more importantly than that, he does not have the stomach for this type of work.
Here's the thing, Dodd hates women. That's his thing. What he really wants is he really just wants a son. And because he doesn't have a son, he's choosing to go with his nephew, which is the closest thing he could get to a son.
Right.
Even though his nephew has no interest into actually being any of the strong side. Actually, he does want to be kind of the manly side of the equation.
Well, he wants to be able to step up the way his father and his uncle and grandfather have, but that's not who he is.
No.
And I think he realizes pretty quickly that that's not who he is.
Right.
Because he goes into the butcher shop and Virgil waits in the car. And I believe Virgil says to him just before he goes in, don't leave any witnesses.
Yeah.
And he goes in and he has this brief conversation with Noreen.
Yeah. And they basically have chemistry at that moment. I kind of became like, is this going to be a love story all of a sudden?
But you see, and I think even before he sees Ed, I think he realizes I'd have to kill her too.
Yes. That's really why he doesn't go through with it. He doesn't want to kill her. And so that's why he just gets some meat. He
comes out with meat that he's purchased.
Yeah. He just buys some meat. So when he does come back later, that's why he's surprised when Noreen's there. But I'm skipping ahead.
Yeah, but we can touch on that because it's going to lead us into just about everything that happens with Ed later. The
big, weird Barton Finky moment. That was very much a nod to Barton Fink, which was kind of nice.
That was the vibe that I got as well, where Charlie goes in and I don't think he would have pulled that trigger anyway, but he walks in and he's ready to shoot Ed cold with his silenced pistol. Noreen sees it, and I think that temporarily...
He panics.
Yeah, and it distracts him. He panics.
Right.
And Ed's able to knock the gun out of his hand, and then in comes Virgil, probably assuming correctly that Charlie was not up to this task.
Yeah, and as soon as he heard a big, grease fire erupt, I think he was like, okay, I should probably step in now. Right. It's probably time to step in. Now there's heat coming from the door, and just burst it down. By the way, Ed, being pretty badass at that moment,
takes Virgil out with a big meat cleaver.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and he's just watching. You have that sad moment even before he goes back to Peggy, where you see him just seeing his entire dream just go up into literal smoke.
Yep.
And just everything burn, and it's just because he went down this path.
Yeah.
So this was the tragedy that was for sure going to happen to Ed, if not more tragedy down the line.
Well, and that's a perfect example of what I was saying at the top of the show about how these couple of episodes so subverted almost every expectation that I had.
Right.
Not just as far as I didn't realize we were going to start seeing top mafia enforcers getting offed quite so quickly,
right.
but also one of the predictions that I made was that Ed, given this time frame to get money to buy the butcher shop, was going to be forced into a position to do something potentially dumb, dangerous.
Yeah, I remember you saying that, and that actually surprised me. I didn't foresee that happening. I didn't think Ed was going to do something stupid. I thought he might have been killed before he did something stupid.
Sure.
I thought something like that was going to happen. I could see Peggy doing something stupid.
Sure.
So I thought maybe that was going to happen. I just didn't think there would be a shootout. There would be hey, everyone knows. There would be like cops showing up to the Blomquist door.
Right.
By this point, I thought
which
that
does
would be...
end up happening.
Yeah. Yeah, and all this, so after the big shootout, he realizes that Peggy's in danger. So
yes.
he goes like running to Peggy's side.
And says, now we have to go.
Yeah, and that's that gift of the Magi moment where it's like, now we have to go, but I sold the car for you.
Right.
And it's a great moment. And I think this was actually my favorite episode of the show so far. Was
5?
The Gift of the Magi episode, because it had these great moments. It had like really funny moments too. It had the Bruce Campbell, and it also had these like intense, just dramatic scenes and then action scenes. It had more than a lot of the other episodes had.
And it managed to take every arc, and it's fitting as it was the midpoint of the season. It took every arc of every faction and every character within those factions and completely turned them on their axes.
Right, yeah.
In an incredibly mind-blowing way.
Yeah, it was great.
So all of this stuff's going on, and then we continue these threads with Mike Milligan and Simone.
Oh, right, yeah.
Who is caught in this awful position. Now, granted, she's at least somewhat responsible for the predicament that she's currently in.
Right. I love how you have this moment with Simone right before the big, shootout in the forest just happened.
Yeah.
So you know that the Gerhardts are on the offensive, and they're attacking. So you see her run to her car and get into the car. Now, they could have done a shot where she just shows up at the hotel, but it's important that they had that moment where she's just driving and listening to music and smoking a blunt and then just kind of like chilling. And because you could tell that she just doesn't know at all what she's in the middle of.
Right.
She just thinks she's being a rebellious teenager.
Sure.
She doesn't have at all any sense that this is like in the middle of war, that lives are on the line, anything like that, until she shows up to the actual hotel.
Yeah, and I think it is that scene between her and Mike where I think for the first time it truly becomes clear to her what type of situation that she's gotten herself into.
Yeah, and there's this nice little moment where she tries to do kind of a power play by being like, she realizes, I didn't know about this attack. I'm going to grab your crotch. To be kind of like, this is my power play, to be like, you still like me, right? I'm still here to sex you up. I'm still there. And Mike just like doesn't pay attention to it. And then it reverses when she backs up and hits a kitchen brother.
Yep.
After seeing like Joe's head in a box.
Yeah.
Yeah. And backs up and hits it. And I just want to like touch upon this. And then he goes for this real creepy like crotch grab thing.
Yeah.
Which is just like, this is how you do a real creepy crotch grab power move. Just like because she came in and tried to do something little, and it's like, no, let me show you how it's done.
Right.
And oof. Ugh.
While in an incredibly intimidating fashion, essentially telling her, if you want to be taken seriously, like, you're playing at being serious, but you're not a serious person.
Yeah.
And making it clear to her, possibly for the first time, because they've been carrying on, let's call it a dalliance. They've been carrying on a dalliance, if you will. Very scandalous. But
that sounds somewhat like less than an affair. It's like, it's not quite an affair. It's a dalliance.
It is quite possibly the most innocent word for this situation that they're in, this very sordid, seedy situation that they're in.
Their genitals were touching.
Indeed they were. Internet.
Smushing.
The internet maybe is not prepared for such conversations.
Sorry. The internet is not ready for genitals touching. They definitely don't have many websites dedicated just to that.
I think we're a good 25 years from the culture on the internet being prepared for such sordid, filthy, etc.
That's why they like to say, when it comes to the internet, leave room for the Holy Ghost. That's what they always say.
in your browser somewhere. They've been carrying on this relationship, and now I think it becomes very clear to Simone in more ways than one just what type of man Mike Milligan is. And we get a little bit of backstory about Mike, which I find fascinating, which he essentially explains why he is this. Regardless of the chaos going on around him, the stakes are literally life and death. He's always smiling. He's always optimistic. And we find out that it was his way of rebelling against his mother, who was such a dark and dour person. If I'm not mistaken, he actually says his mother made them eat in the dark, because she was that morose of a person.
I love the line, "She always found a cloud and a silver lining."
Yes, exactly.
That was such a great line. He has some of the best lines in the entire show, because he's definitely the smartest character. And you also get this great moment after he kind of shocks Simone by showing Joe's head in the box.
Bullo's severed head, yeah.
Yeah, there's this nice moment that kind of mirrors the tenderness they had back in, I think, episode 2, where they were talking about each other's hair, and they touched each other's hair to talk about, oh, I do this for moisturizer. And this nice little humanizing moment between two mafia monsters. And we see that it's Joe's head and his hair, and he just touches Joe's hair just a little bit. Yeah. And it's a nice little, it shows that he really liked Joe. And it makes you remember that nice little tender scene that happened in previous episode, which was a beautiful moment.
And it was, and he admits too that, and we've seen Mike Milligan go as cold as he needs to go. Yeah. But we've never really seen a crack in the optimist that is Mike Milligan, even when he has to put on his game face and stare somebody down, like when he stared down Hank in, I believe, episode 2, when they got pulled over. But he admits this type of thing, and he does so sardonically, but it's this type of thing that shakes his optimism. And that's when he turns on Simone in a way that she clearly was not expecting, and puts her in a position where he doesn't openly say, "or I'm going to kill you." Right. But it's a pretty strong implication that if you don't inform on your family for me, I'm going to kill you.
Yeah. Yeah. And he also kind of just keeps her in his pocket. Yep. Which was important for what happens in the next episode. Right. But can we move on to the next one?
Yes, and the only other thing I want to touch on, there is the only UFO thing that I found in episode 5 was in Molly's drawing, the crayon drawing, where I think maybe she was going for the sun, but...
Yeah, but it implies that maybe she was actually... she saw a UFO. Now, I can't figure out what the thematic meaning behind any of the UFO stuff is. We've talked about it a little bit. We'll probably talk about it more in predictions. Sure. Coming up. But it keeps appearing, and I can't figure out quite what it is. So I'm really hoping in the show they really bring it together at the end. Yeah. That there's some moment. Now there's too many hints to make it just be a weird thing that they did in the beginning of the show. There has to be a moment at the end that kind of brings all of the UFO stuff together and makes sense for some thematic reason. I think it's something to do with just not knowing what's out there, not knowing what this new world is. It's feeling like a new world after Vietnam. Sure. It's feeling like there's a lot of unknowns and people need a hero to come in. So maybe the alien represents the hero, or maybe the aliens represent just that feeling of the unknown. So it's something like that. I don't need it to actually have a plot reason. I just need it to have a thematic reason.
Well, and you do see that nobody, even the people that seem to be aware of whatever it is that they are, don't seem afraid. Even the motorist that Lou talks to a couple episodes back, who was going on about it, doesn't seem panicked necessarily. That's true. He just seems assertive in his assumption that they're coming.
And Hansi just seemed to be like, I lost time. Yeah. Oh, that's a thing that happens.
It's the alien hour, it's fine.
Yeah, it's the alien hour.
Yeah, and like I would think Molly, being a child, if this was something she was petrified about, her parents would have heard about it by now.
She also wouldn't draw it like the sun.
Right, sure. Like this, yes, like this beacon of warmth, and everybody in the picture's smiling, nobody's afraid.
It didn't seem like, it would be weird if there's the through line is it turns out Molly was abducted. Or like Molly has been an alien the whole time. I'd be surprised.
That would be the not insignificant retconning of season 1.
Yeah.
But then maybe we could loop back around to season 3, tie that up. Molly gives birth to a space baby.
Maybe season 3 is going to take place. No, that doesn't make sense. It can't take place in Roswell. That doesn't make any sense.
That's a little far removed from
Fargo.
Well, oh dear, we will see. So, but that, and I bring that up too because unless I missed it, I didn't see an overt UFO reference in episode 6.
No, I don't think so. Not that I noticed. It happens like every other episode.
Sure, where there's a very glaring one.
Yeah, every once in a while there's a little one that happens. And then keeps moving. And you have Carl, which is enough of a UFO-like reference.
Carl is...
I feel like Carl is going to get abducted. I feel like something's going to happen with Carl and the UFO that's going to bring it all together. Because Carl does seem like the type of person that would see a UFO.
Sure.
So maybe that's where it's going with this.
So moving into episode 6, you said yourself at the top of the episode, you referenced Assault on Precinct 13.
Right, yeah.
My first thought... when I realized what the episode was, my head immediately went to Rio Bravo, that Howard Hawks movie, which Assault on Precinct 13 is, for all intents and purposes, a loose remake of.
This made me realize how much of a Western Fargo is.
Yes.
Because it was very much a Western-like episode. And, the whole story is kind of Western-y.
A little bit.
Because you have these groups, you have a lone sheriff, or a group of lone sheriffs that are just trying to root out the bad guys and kind of save the regular townsfolk. And it takes place in basically the Midwest, but it's the West.
Sure.
Yeah, it's sure. West of New York.
It's west. Yeah, it's west of a lot of places.
Yeah.
But it is both Rio Bravo and Assault on Precinct 13. After it, deal with a group of outlaws. Threatening to, and then eventually attempting to, lay siege to a jail or a small town to get one of their own out of custody.
Right.
And we see that repeated here. In this case, it's Bear and a bunch of Gerhardt enforcers coming to the jail, A, to get Charlie back, B, to kill Ed.
Yeah, they're not quite sure if Ed's there though, because there's two parties that go out, where one is after the kid, and then the other party goes to the Blomquist house, which also is a problem in the show.
And wonderful opening to this episode as well, as we hear Mike Milligan reciting a good chunk of Jabberwocky.
I think it's the entire Jabberwocky.
Is it the
poem.
entire thing?
It's not a very long poem.
That's true.
Yeah, and that's a nice moment, because that's also why I mentioned that I think that Rhinoceros is more of a nod towards the
absurdism.
Yeah, because Jabberwocky is in itself a very absurd poem, because it's just about, most of the words don't make sense.
Right.
Most of the words aren't real. Some of the words actually became real after Jabberwock. It's like
they passed into more general usage.
General use just because of the poem was out there. But the story of the Jabberwock is very simple. It's just one hero fighting what could be a dragon, some sort of monster, defeating it. Snicker snack, takes its head, goes glumping back. So it's just a simple story told in a very, very absurd way, which is Fargo.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so it just kind of mirrors the actual telling of the story and the actual series itself, rather than what Mike is doing specifically, which is kind of interesting. He kind of mirrors the entire story.
Sure.
But it's also like a call to arms, because it happens at a moment when Simone gives him a call, lets him know that all the guys have left the compound and are now out to either pick up their Gerhardt or to kill Ed.
Right.
While at the same time, it's what she doesn't realize is, and what I actually didn't realize, this was actually a surprise to me. Did you catch this? Did you think that Oh, now he knows that the compound's open and that only the women and children are left?
I was about to ask you if you thought that Simone had any clue what was going to happen, because my assumption, they talked specifically, Simone and Mike Milligan, about, and I could call him Mike, but saying Mike Milligan is just so much fun. The two of them talk specifically about killing Dodd.
Yeah, I think Simone is thinking that he's going to go after Dodd. And so did I, actually. I didn't really think about it too much. I thought, like, oh, this will be an opportunity to maybe get Dodd alone, or to go out and intercept them, or try to get to Ed before them or something. I didn't quite get that this meant that the compound was open. And so it surprised me when he showed up.
You also mentioned that surprisingly tender moment where he touches Bulow's head's hair in the box, and you do get the impression that, yes, they had their professional relationship, but in as much as Mike Milligan cares about anybody, he seemed to like Joe. Yeah. And the Kitchen brothers are his right and left hand men. Yeah. And he lost one of the Kitchen brothers and Bulow. So for him, I think this is as personal as it gets for Mike Milligan. So it does make sense in a way that he would then turn it around and hit the Gerhardts quite literally where they live in a very, very personal way. Yeah. But I didn't see that coming either.
Yeah, it makes me wonder who's going to get out of that compound alive.
Yeah, so we have this moment right before this siege begins of Floyd and Simone in the kitchen. And Floyd asks Simone, essentially, are you with us?
Right.
And she means the family. And do you think Floyd suspects anything, or is it just you're a bit of a flake and a rebellious kid, and where are you going to come down?
I think she suspects. She's like the two smartest people in this whole show are Mike Milligan and Floyd, because they're the ones that are trying to. Floyd's just trying to keep the family together and just trying to like keep the home front, and Mike Milligan's manipulating things on the outside. But Floyd is like, I think she's able to see through that stuff. She knows that she might be betraying them in some way. I don't think she knows exactly that she's going off and sleeping with, smushing genitals together with... Smushing. That's the clinical term.
Like
that's a medical term.
That's equal parts adorable and repulsive.
Yeah, that's what I go for. That's my brand. So, like, I don't think she knows exactly what's going on, but, like, she gets a sense that she is a very weak chain.
Yes.
So, and could easily go off in a separate direction, especially seeing how Dodd treats her.
Absolutely.
Which is the worst.
And it's before this happens, as Dodd is on his way out, he literally... he dresses it up by asking his daughter, do you know what a whore's life is? But he's literally calling his daughter a whore.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
Dodd's
a dick. He's a dick. He's such a dick.
Someone should cattle prod him. Is what I think. I think it'd especially be great if it was a woman.
The symbolism at play there is out. And okay, let's get to that. So do we know at this point who survived the siege on the Gerhardt compound who didn't? We do not.
That's where it ends. Is just the siege happens, the whole house gets like torn up. I'd be surprised if Papa Gerhardt survives, because he's on like the porch, right?
And by the way, hats off to Michael Hogan for being in almost every episode so far and just sitting in the chair looking around.
Great.
That's wonderful stroke acting.
It's perfect. Great stroke acting. Okay, so the rest of the Gerhardts are they're either at the police station or they're at the Blomquist house. So let's talk about the Blomquist.
Let's talk about the Blomquist.
Okay. So Hank is there, right? Is that his name?
Yes, Hank shows up.
Okay.
And he's finally talking. He has this conversation one-on-one with Peggy, and I love that he listens to everything that Peggy says, and he asks, "You're a little touched, aren't you?"
Yeah.
And Peggy doesn't quite know what he's talking about, but he's trying to figure out what the reasoning is for because now everybody knows that Rye was hit with their car.
Yeah.
That's what happened. Why you just came home? Why didn't you...
Peggy has a great scene here where she just really lays out what her thinking has been, where she's coming from, the idea that when something so absurd happens, you act in an absurd manner.
Yes.
Because
these things don't happen in a vacuum, is what she said.
Yeah, they don't happen in a vacuum. You make choices as if you make a choice in a dream.
Yes.
Which is perfect. And it really makes it humanizes her, and these 2 episodes have been very humanizing for Peggy, because she did something that wasn't selfish in one episode, and then this one she actually identifies that she does have issues and is addressing them in a lot of ways. I actually heard that in an interview with Kirsten Dunst, she talked about how there was a scene that was cut from one of the second episodes early on, where it was actually a flashback to right before Vietnam happened. And Peggy had a fiance who wasn't Ed, but when the fiance went to Vietnam, he turned to Ed. They were at a butcher shop. The scene takes place in the butcher shop, where the fiance says, "Hey, if anything happens, you watch out for her, okay?" And then walks off, which is a nice...
You're blowing my mind right now.
Yeah, it's interesting that I understood why they cut it out, because I think it's almost unneeded, but it maybe
puts too fine a point on it, but it does color that relationship. It makes it even sadder.
Yeah, it enforces the idea that Peggy is someone who could, one, just be handed off to someone else.
Yeah.
That she's dealing with the fact of being in a very misogynist society and trying to find her own way, and is not very sure how just to find that. And also Ed's kind of protectiveness over her makes sense now too, because he's the one that kind of
he was given a charge essentially.
Yeah, he was given a charge. So but Peggy still is really still trying to figure out how she's going to get out, how she's going to escape. And you see, actually, in previous episode, you saw just the stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks of travel magazines and beauty magazines. I knew they were travel magazines. I didn't realize they were beauty magazines, where, she's obsessing over how to get out of town, how to get out of this,
and they have done such a wonderful job, and Kirsten Dunst, I think, has played this so excellently over the course of the season so far, peeling back very gradually layers of Peggy to reveal just how deep her unhappiness runs.
Yeah.
And it's so very tragic.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's also kind of becoming a love story between her and Ed. They're kind of getting closer.
It took her hitting Rye Gerhardt with her car, but...
Yeah, because, as these layers come out of her character that we see, they also, Ed sees it, too. So are these moments, in the previous episode, they had this honest moment where they said, we have to leave.
Yeah.
That Gift of the Magi episode was where their love kind of actually, starts to hit.
Yeah.
And where you actually think, they could make it. Too bad one of them's probably going to be in jail, and they might both not make it out of this alive.
Yeah.
And, she's obsessed with getting to her convention.
Sure.
Which
Life
she
Spring.
still is, Life Spring, which I want to talk about in predictions, because
I think I know what you're going to predict as pertains to that, but yes, we'll hit that for sure.
We'll hit that later. So
but I think something that you were starting to get at too is, especially she's got, for example, all these travel magazines, and this decision that she made, maybe without being fully conscious of that being the reason she was making the decision at the time, but she says in a roundabout way, or certainly this was my reading of it, this decision, not going to the police, but handling the Rye situation the way that she and then Ed did, forces them to make a drastic change, forces them to totally uproot their lives and do something completely different.
Yes, yeah.
Which, again, just to me speaks to how deeply unhappy Peggy is.
That's very true. And I think unhappy, I think Ed's even a little unhappy.
Oh, sure.
Himself. So what happens right now, let's focus on that, because we get Dodd showing up at the door.
And Hank, who is there,
Did you think Hank was going to die? Because I really thought he was going to die.
So I thought he was, but I've been thinking that all season, and now I'm starting to think maybe he won't, if only because my fear for him sprang from, there was a sheriff in season 1.
Yeah.
He didn't last very long. But maybe now, because of that, because maybe some people will expect that a similar fate will befall Hank, they're going to keep him around a little bit longer. Yeah. I assumed for a minute or two, though, that he was done for, especially when he's talking to Dodd. And by the way, he's got this wonderful line where Dodd asks if Hank thinks he's stupid, and Hank replies, "Son, I could fill a steamer trunk with the amount of stupid I think you are."
Yeah, that's great.
He tells me, no, Ed's not here. and you have this amazing split screen that is used a couple of times. It's been used throughout the season, but it's used to amazing effect in this episode where you see Hansi creeping through and around the house, and he comes, and this was the moment where I truly feared for Hank. But he comes around and, surprisingly to me, instead of killing Hank, just knocks him out with the butt of his rifle.
Well, it's smarter to knock out a cop than to actually kill a cop.
It brings a lot more heat than killing a butcher, for sure.
Yeah. So they knock him out, and then before this, he tells Peggy to go hide somewhere in the basement, somewhere in the attic, wherever there is where she can hide.
And you see the Blomquist basement.
Yeah, and the bone, because we saw it before in the previous, maybe in the Gift of Magi episode, I forget where.
But you see these stacks and stacks of hoarded magazines that
She's
create.
a hoarder.
It creates this Minotaur maze almost.
Yeah.
That gives Peggy an advantage.
Yeah, so all of her dreams actually saves her life.
In a way, yeah.
Yeah, she's able to hide in the basement, and then she knocks one guy out. I think basically kills him with the sink. And then Dodd goes after her, and then she's able to corner him and cattle prod him.
Gets him hard with the cattle prod.
So there's a couple of questions that happen at this thing, because Hank's knocked out, and then he wakes up later to go to the precinct. So where we're left with what's happening at the Blomquist house is we don't know what's the deal with Dodd. We don't know if Dodd is alive or if he was cattle prodded to death. I'm guessing he's still alive, maybe tied up or something.
Sure.
I feel like she'll have a hard time killing him. And two, we don't really know what her situation is. It's the one kind of like... There's the one problem that I've come across, and a lot of critics, as I've been reading about this episode, have mentioned, is it's a little weird that Hank wakes up and goes
leaves.
to the car and leaves.
I've read the same, not even criticisms, but pointing out that seems very out of character.
It's very out of character. I mean, he does have a head injury,
and it seems like he's missed a step a little bit.
Yeah, I feel like this might be the one time where they might have a little bit of just like, well, he has a head injury. We
have to get him over here somehow.
We just have to get the Blomquist alone somehow and get him over here, and then so we'll see. Maybe they'll have like a nice way to like tie everything up.
Sure.
But I'm on the lookout for it because right now it just kind of seemed like head injury. That's
very weirdly out of character moment.
Because I feel like he would be like, well, truck's still here. Oh well, I'll get into the car and drive back because the truck is still out there. It's not just that like I'm sure she's safe. Everyone's not here anymore.
Right.
But
what ends up happening is he gets the call on the radio about the siege taking place at the police station, and Lou told the dispatcher when radioing, do not come until backup arrives.
Right.
And Hank, in another moment that seemed to me very cowboyish compared to what we've seen from Hank so far, he essentially says, I'm not going to let him die without me.
Yeah.
And he goes. So I'm going like, what? The Gerhardt men, led by Bear, are laying siege to the police station, and Carl is there, is called from his night of revels with Sonny and company to come to the jailhouse to act as representation for Ed.
Right.
When the siege begins, Lou's plan is to say, no, you're no longer Ed's lawyer, you're Charlie's lawyer, and to send him out and negotiate Bear away from the police station. And in this wonderful tour de force performance from Carl Weathers, who is petrified, drunk, soiled himself, he manages to talk Bear and the Gerhardts down. And it's actually in a very eloquent and heartfelt.
Yeah, and you also right before this, he also like gets into the, for one, he says "Shut up, Sonny," which is nice because that's a nice little like he's definitely
Walter from Big Lebowski.
Yeah. So he's walking into the police. I almost said academy, but station, and just like, and it's just yelling and making this tirade and just like telling everyone to like, calling everyone Nazis, calling everyone this, calling everyone that, and he might maybe that's even more of a nice little like nod towards the Rhinoceros actually, because he was like kind of claiming everyone's like everyone's a Nazi, everyone's like he was saying boot heels, stuff like that.
Yeah, jackboots. Yeah,
and then he like immediately turns, and then he even comes back and sits and barricades the door, and then sits on it. But you notice later
the jackboots are upon us.
Yeah, the door opens out, so the bench doesn't
Would
do
not
anything.
have done anything, yeah.
Which is another little nod towards Walter, I think, because it's like when he set up the door in Big Lebowski, he set up a barricade of the door,
yes,
and it also opened out.
Yes,
so he also had that problem. And I'm excited because I'm about to see Nick Offerman next month in Boston doing a Confederacy of Dunces.
Oh, I'm jealous.
He's Ignatius,
yeah.
Which is like, this shows how great he's going to be.
That's ideal casting.
In this blowhard, but eloquent language, flowing out of him. It's so perfect.
And
he was so perfect. I think he needs an Emmy for this episode.
I would agree. In that moment, Carl saves the day. He actually saves the police station. Yeah. You think for a moment maybe Bear is going to shoot him, because Bear really doesn't. You can tell he doesn't know for a minute what he's going to do. But it is literally, he's still my son. And Bear, to his credit, thinks first as a father and not as a gangster, essentially, and they leave. And the last thread from this episode that we have to touch on is that while this is happening, Lou is sneaking Ed out of the police station through the woods, where they meet up with Hank, who's I guess was on his way to the police. It was a little convenient, but
maybe they were on the radio with him. But
in that moment when they meet, Ed takes off.
Yeah, because he sees that Hank has a giant shiner. He has a giant, was obviously attacked.
Right.
And I think he assumed, oh, you're coming from my house, so he just runs towards his house.
And Lou's about to start booking it after him, but Hank goes, "Why? Don't waste your energy. Let's get in the cruiser. You please drive, because my head is I'm seeing double."
Which is why I did an uncharacteristic choice of driving here without checking the house.
But we know where he's going.
Yeah,
so
we know where he's
why
going.
wait? Let's get in the car and let's follow him. And then you see that Hansi, who was staking out the police station himself, is right on foot, but right on their trail. And it's a safe assumption that he knows where they're going to.
Yeah, so I think everyone's heading to the Blomquist right now.
And that's where we end episode 6.
Yeah. So it's okay. So should we talk about predictions?
You know what? Yeah, real quick, because we got to wrap up pretty soon. Let's get into predictions really quickly.
And now, your AFTERBUZZ TV prediction.
The light show never gets old.
It's a Fargo UFO. Okay. So a big thing with this whole season.
Yes.
The first episode starts with a fake movie called Massacre at Sioux Falls.
Yes.
And also,
I figured this was where you're going.
Lou in the previous season, older Lou, talked about how whatever he saw the Massacre at Sioux Falls, and that that made him quit. That made him quit being a policeman. Now, the Massacre at Sioux Falls is an actual event that happened in the 70s.
Yes.
It happened with three brothers disguised themselves as policemen and murdered a bunch of campers and raped a woman, and only one 13-year-old girl survived. So it was pretty horrendous.
And Sioux Falls is South Dakota, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think
it's the internet. Please feel free to correct me on this if I'm wrong, but I believe it is Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
The point is, I think the where Peggy keeps wanting to go,
this Life Spring Retreat,
is at Sioux Falls.
Yes.
So it's heading there. It's going in that direction. So it's maybe it could skip even a couple of years, because we know Fargo likes to do that.
And yes, that happened in season 1.
Yeah, that happened in season 1. So, and now that we're getting into the next half of the show, it's going closer and closer to Sioux Falls. So I'm really wondering what they're going to do there, and how that's going to be, and how the real Sioux Falls is going to be involved or mimicked in a way.
Yeah,
because that's where the based off a true story is, and they like to mimic kind of real life things that have happened. So. What do you think?
I agree with you. I assume that it's building towards some big Sioux Falls style reckoning. Whether or not it's actually located at Sioux Falls, or if they keep alluding to it just to keep the close parallel alive.
Yeah.
What I'm fascinated about watching these 2 episodes, there was a point at which I went, oh, okay, the biggest threat to the Gerhardts, I think, is now probably the Gerhardts themselves. But now, I'm not sure that the Gerhardts are going to be as formidable as they've been built up to be.
Right.
Floyd might now retaliate for this attack. Hopefully she survived, because I love Floyd.
It'll be nice.
She'll be looking to retaliate because they tried to hit her, and they hit her home. So she will be looking for some type of retaliation. But you saw Dodd receive at least some temporary comeuppance, and you don't, when you get cattle prodded that hard, you don't just walk it off immediately.
Right.
And you saw, I don't think Bear is that guy at all. Bear, you saw him humanized in this most recent episode in a way that I don't think I was expecting. You saw traces of it, but I don't think when it really comes down to it, Bear is all that villainous compared to, say, his brother.
Yeah, I love that when we first met him, he almost looked like the scarier of the two. Because he's like a big guy with a beard. But as we've learned more about him, he's the softie.
In fact, he's a teddy bear. Sorry. But I don't know if the Gerhardts are going to be all that big a force of destruction going forward.
Yeah, they're kind of getting whittled down.
I think Hansi is still probably going to rack up a few more bodies before the season is over, as is his intention. But even Hansi has been played by Dodd a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know. I don't know where I see that going.
I was on the Reddit forums for Fargo, by the way, and someone had a great prediction. I don't think this is true. I think this is a stretch, but I thought this was funny. That the kid who's in jail right now, is actually Malvo.
Charlie?
Yeah, that he becomes Malvo.
His hand got better.
His hand got better after his family gets destroyed, and his hand got better, and he became like a serial killer.
Wow.
I don't think that's true.
I don't either.
But I thought it was a nice way. It does make me wonder if there is going to be more ties to the other season or the actual movie itself.
Sure. And one last question that I want to ask you prediction-wise, and then we'll wrap up.
Right.
I think this is probably, I don't think we're going to be seeing any more of Bruce Campbell as Ronald Reagan this season.
No, I think that's it.
I think we got a little Susan of Campbell, if you will.
And I think it was enough.
And I think that made the point.
Yeah, I think it was enough that it was perfect for the moment, and if they keep bringing Reagan back, it's just like, why is Reagan spending so much time in Fargo?
Ronald Reagan is the wacky neighbor now.
Yeah, he's just always there, unless he fights some aliens.
Exactly,
yeah.
and that's
he is an alien.
Look, I will not let go of Space Reagan until this season is over and done with, and it's all behind us. I will hold out hope that Space Reagan will become a reality.
Space Reagan. That'd be great.
So yeah, and like you said, hopefully we see some resolution to this UFO angle. But what that will be, I have no clue.
Could be in Sioux Falls.
It's just this massive battle where aliens invade and it's just zapping
Hansi.
Everybody, and Hansi just murks all the aliens, and then without the aid of a spacecraft ascends to the stars.
Yeah. To be one of them. Perfect.
We will submit a spec script to FX to this effect. That's going to do it for episodes 5 and 6. We will be back next week, where we will from now till the end of the season, 1 episode a week. We'll be back next week with episode 7. Mr. Dave Child, where can people find you on the internet?
At Mr. Dave Child.
Everywhere.
Twitter, Instagram, or davechild.com.
Everywhere. I, too, am on all of the individual web, internet-y, platformy, talky things. My handle is at the Lex Michael. That is going to do it for us in the Fargo Season 2 after show for this week. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later! The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.